Good afternoon, everyone. Robert Chesson here, Landlord Law Firm, with your February edition of the Landlord Advocate. Thanks for joining us again this month. Hopefully you enjoyed January's first installment of our new video advocate, and we will continue on that format, hopefully giving you better and more comprehensive information that will help you manage your properties more aggressively and more effectively. This month, we're still talking about lease management. That's the core topic we started with in January, and wanted to focus our February edition of the Advocate on the concept of lease renewals. We get lots of questions about lease renewals. Not surprisingly, dealing with tenants or residents who our clients are displeased with. So we're not going to talk about lease renewals from the context of your regular process for those residents who are model residents who pay their rent on time and never cause a problem. There's no need to cover those folks. You've got those processes in place. The real questions come up with in the context of a resident who's been referred to our office, for example, and is now facing a lease renewal, or facing what the management would like to be a lease non-renewal, and how to approach that. So let's talk about that this month, and maybe we can give you guys some guidance on how to deal with that. Let's first talk about end of lease strategies. You're getting close to the end of the lease. There's a few months left to go, and there's the possibility that you might want to refer that resident to your attorney because of their behavior, because they're not paying, whatever the context might be. What can you do? Well, obviously, one of the things you can do is just follow your non-renewal process. Tell the tenant that you don't intend to renew their lease, and invite them to vacate voluntarily at the end of the current lease term. There's going to be some ins and outs associated with that, and so if you get to that state and you got questions, by all means reach out to your attorney and get some guidance on that. One of the things to remember most is if they don't ultimately leave voluntarily, you will have to proceed through the courts in order to address their residency and to regain possession of the unit. If they are otherwise compliant at that point, and you've asked them to leave but they don't go, you do need to go through the summary process in order to actually regain possession. Do not try to take possession back on your own and create lots of liabilities for yourself that you want to avoid. So that's people who are approaching the end of the lease. Let's talk about those who aren't anywhere near the end of their lease, who otherwise are facing an offering to your legal counsel to end up in court somewhere. There's, as you know, most of the cases here in Connecticut end up settling out on probationary stipulation, one that basically has various requirements that are imposed, and if they are followed, then the resident gets to remain in their apartment. If they are not, then they face an immediate execution or eviction at that point. If your lease is coming due, or if the tenant's lease is coming due and those people are already in the legal process, there's really there's a couple of ways. I guess there's more than two, but we'll talk about two ways to deal with that. And the first would be having the resolution of the legal case coincide and match up with the time frame of the lease renewal, so that when they come off the probationary period, assuming they've complied and you're happy with them, then you can start a new lease and proceed from there. The second one is if the lease is too far out, or the resolution is going to require more effort than you have time for under their current lease. But if their behavior, if their payment habits improve, you'd be happy to let them remain on the premises. And that stipulation, or that probationary stipulation, might not resolve and coincide with your lease. And so oftentimes what we'll do in those circumstances is we'll find out from you what the expectations are at lease renewal time, what the rent increases might be, if there's going to be any changes that you'd like to incorporate, and we'll build those into the probationary stipulation so that those are already designed and put in place before that lease renewal process might have come up, and so you can take advantage of rent increases that you might be seeing or something along those lines, and incorporate those into the future expectations that you have for that particular resident. One of the things that's really important is if you're in the legal process, you don't need, and frankly you should not go through your standard lease renewal process, even if it's a lease non-renewal process. If you offer a lease renewal or you offer a lease non-renewal, effectively you potentially are going to adversely affect the legal case that you've got in place, because as you know, when we start that legal case, when we start filing documents, the notice to quit terminates the tenant's lease. If you're offering renewal or offering a non-renewal for that matter, what you're suggesting is that the lease was still in effect. And since we've terminated that with our documentation that we file, that we're required to file, by proceeding with your lease renewal process with a case that's already in court, you actually create some legal challenges that may be impossible to overcome with the existing legal case. Not necessarily as important in the context of the resident who you'd like to keep, but if it's somebody that you're interested in actually having regaining possession from, and who you would actually like to have evicted from the property, creating those kinds of pitfalls can actually cause problems for you way down the road that may not even come up in the existing case when it's time to actually try to remove them from the premises, and you don't want to sabotage your legal rights by going through that non-renewal process. So just to reiterate that, to make sure it was clear, if you've got a case that's in the legal process with your attorney, speak with them first before you proceed with any part of your lease renewal process or your lease non-renewal process, because what you don't want to do and what you want to try to avoid is undercutting the legal process, the legal case that you've got going, because you may be trying for a particular end game, and you may prevent yourself from getting that by going through your lease renewal process. Last piece I want to cover about renewals and non-renewals is in Connecticut there's a statute that actually protects people who are disabled or who are over the age of 62 from what we call a lapse of time eviction, meaning the lease expires, they don't move, and you'd like the premises back, so you go through the eviction process. In Connecticut, if you've got someone who is either disabled or over the age of 62, you can't do a lapse of time eviction. They're protected from that. And so if the resident who you are dealing with falls into that category, highly recommend you discuss with legal counsel before you proceed one way or the other, either through the non-renewal process or through the summary process in court to try to regain possession. There are ways that you can do it that we've employed with our clients that have been very successful, but if it's not done correctly, you're basically going to be spending money and spending time to no end, and you're still going to have a resident that for whatever reason you were trying to have move along. So anybody in that circumstance, make sure you reach out to counsel before you proceed down your renewal path or your non-renewal path, so that you know all the ins and outs that you need to cover, and make sure you can get possession of that unit back if that's what you're ultimately trying to do. Hope that was helpful. I know that was long, but renewals is a big deal, and it's very, very important. But I want to make sure we covered it here in our landlord management segment this first quarter of 2016. And we look forward to seeing you in March for our third installment of the Landlord Video Advocate and our last component of the Lease Management core topic for this round. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.